What is going on, dudes and lady dudes? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today, I'm a day late, and I apologize for that. Yesterday was a weird day, but today I'm here with a video talking about the new tag duel rules Konami has updated. If you don't know, tag dueling has been like a part in the anime that has been shown a couple times, where it's essentially just a 2v2 duel. A lot of people thought it was cool. I thought a lot of people thought it was refreshing and different from normal 1v1 duels. But I guess like the rules have been like not quite developed, not quite. They haven't been thorough with really making sure that there's like a set like base of rules that people can go by if they ever want to do tag duels. And I think this is really cool. I really think this could be like a really cool thing. You look at like Pokemon, not the card game, but the video game competitively. A lot of people play like the standard format for Pokemon Company and playing Pokemon. I don't know, at their competitive events is VGC, which is like you take six Pokemon, you see your opponent's team, you pick four, and you lead with two. So it's like in battle, it's only 1v1 like in terms of people, but you have two Pokemon in. That's not important. What's important is that a lot of competitive players prefer the 6v6 like singles style instead. It's just a different format, right? And Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't really have that. It's all just 1v1. We really only have one format. There are some stuff like we've seen a couple of YCSs with I guess there's an exception. We've seen a couple of YCSs that Konami's been starting to do, which are the 3v3 YCSs, where you have a team of three, but you duel individually and you're just dueling your opponent's three people, and then you just need to win two out of the three of those matches there. So that's like the main difference, is that that's still singles. It's just singles with teammates. Whereas this is legitimately two teammates in the same duel, dueling together, and stuff. So this is just a little article that Konami released where they updated some of the tag duel rules, and I'm really curious what this means. Like why do this? Like, I guess you could do this for the fan bases because this is just more fun for players anyway. If it's more concrete in the rules, then like people don't have to make up their own rules, and it feels more official, even if they wanted to do it just with their friends casually. It just feels like they're doing it the right way. Or this could just be the start of them kind of getting some rules set straight, figuring out like what they want for the rule base, and then maybe we'll see some events that are tag duel based, and that's I think what a lot of people are excited about with this. But at least getting to the specifics. First things first is how the teams are structured. So obviously there are two players, a player A and a player B. You decide this at the beginning of the tournament, and this is not changed like throughout the whole tournament. So you have to make sure you have that you know who wants to be player A and who wants to be player B, because it's huge, and we'll get there. Teams are numbered 1 and 2. The player A of team 1 is player 1A, for example. So when you're in a match versus another team, one team is team 1, one team is team 2, and then you have your player like letters. So if you're the player, you decide to go first, or whatever, you say you're the player that decided to be player A, you'll be on team 1, you're player 1A, and then player 1B is your partner, and then your opponent will be 2A and 2B. It all plays into how things get like ordered and stuff. Player A always goes before player B. An example of how turn order works would be player 1A, player 2A, player 1B, player 2B, assuming that team 1 went first. So that's very, very important. That's actually very important in terms of how you build your deck, where even if you guys win or lose the die roll, player B on your team is going to be either going third or fourth in rotation, which means their deck is probably going to want to be built to do more stuff going second, to be a better going second deck, because he's always going he's never going first. He's never going to be the first player. So mind control, instant fusion are never going to be dead. Just really powerful stuff like that is never going to be dead. So that's really cool. I really think that's like an interesting dynamic to it, making it so one of you wants to win the die roll, and so wants to have like a more going first focused deck, and the other player can have like just break your board kind of built decks. built deck just to handle whatever the player one or player A doesn't scoop up, right? Then player A is the first name registered on the team registration form. Player B is the second. We just kind of already went over that. They just kind of specified a little bit there. The main differences between Tag Duels and the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG: each team has a combined 16,000 life points. That's another thing. You don't have individual life points, so it's not like in the anime. I know there were some duels in the anime where both duelists had life points, and if you knocked out one of the duelists, all their life points, they'd just be out, and then it'd be 2v1 from there. You guys share a life point pool. If they're connecting to your life points, they're connecting to your life points, and it's just one giant pool. You don't have those split and can take out one duelist and then go after the other. So that is something really important to note. If it hits 0, the team loses. If a player would win or lose, such as by Exodia, the team would lose. So alternate win conditions as well can just still win automatically. You each have your own field. This includes field, graveyard, and banish. That's also something that's very important, because I know I've dueled with people in which we just kind of combined. We played on one field. It was a slower time in Yu-Gi-Oh! And you could just play one field. You weren't worried about clogging monster zones and stuff. Back when I was way, way younger, just trying to duel in a different way. That's definitely a nice thing. You must use only your own deck and extra deck. That's another thing as well. You can't just... if you didn't have enough extra deck slots for your deck, you had a very extra deck tight deck, and your opponent isn't, you can't just put the extra cards in your opponent's extra deck and summon them from there. It has to be summoned from your own extra deck, and you can't search cards from your opponent's deck if you have a card that is a search, and maybe you desires to weigh all copies, or you know what I mean, like stuff like that. You can only activate cards or effects you control that can use... sorry. You can only activate cards or effects you control, but can use your opponent's cards for paying costs. This includes using as material for XYZ. So this is pretty interesting. You can use your opponent's stuff for costs. So I'm curious how that factors in for like tribute summoning. If like you can just tribute off an opponent, like your teammate's monster, just to get out like a bigger guy, or I'm curious if that actually truly counts as cost, or if it's happening at the same time. But it's still cool. I mean, it makes stuff like enemy controller more versatile. You don't have to tribute your only one monster. If your opponent has 2 or 3, you can tribute off the less useful monster there to still like get that steal effect, which is pretty nice. I like that for sure. And then there can only be one field spell per team. So same thing. I guess this makes sense. I mean, considering you guys, I don't know. It makes sense because there's like 2 sides necessarily. And with too many field spells, it could just get convoluted throughout the scheme of things. And it would just be weird. Like, it would be so much to keep track of. If like all players had a different, like 4 different field spells, it'd just be so much. Then we move to technical differences, right? More specific technical differences with play. On your teammate's turn, you can activate effects similar to an opponent's turn. So Forbidden Chalice can't be activated from your hand, but it could be activated if set. Same thing with like traps and stuff. Same thing with monster quick effects. If it's just like, if it was chainable, you can chain it, which is pretty good. Which just it just makes sense, right? You can't just do whatever you want. This next rule is super interesting, right? You can talk or share private information with your teammates, such as showing a card in your hand or showing a set card. Prior, there was a rule that players must speak verbally in language that all players understand. This has since been conspicuously removed. I mean, there's nothing to say that, like, you will know a similar language with, you know what I mean? With, like, your opponents and stuff. I'm assuming you'd be able to talk to your teammate, like you would share the language, so that's not a big deal there. But okay, that's what judges are there for, like translators and stuff. But this one is what's important here, is that you can straight up talk. Like when I played with my friends when I was in high school, we made rules where like you can't talk, like you can't show them stuff. It's all about like to make it more interesting. You'd have to like trust that your teammate has the right card set that you need, right? And go from there. So, but this is really, really interesting. It makes for really strong communication and the possibility for very, very strong like combo plays with each other, and that's pretty cool. In contrast to before, the forbidden and limited release is now applied to each player, not each team. So if you want to, you can both play one Raigeki apiece, but you can't play two in one player's deck and not in the other player's deck. If that makes sense. This makes sense. I mean, you just apply the ban list to yourself like normally. Each player has access to one of two extra monster zone. When one is taken, the other automatically becomes the opponent's. So there are each player. So I believe this is just like the same. So like your board matches up with if your player 1A, player 2A's board matches up with yours, and you have like extra monster zones like that. And same thing for player B, I believe will also have it's like just essentially setting up two mats across like next to each other. If your opponent extra links you, if player one like 2A extra links you and your player 1A, you cannot just use the extra deck slots from like your teammate's side. You can't just go over to the B player side and use those extra monsters. You are still locked out, which is pretty interesting. I mean, I guess it makes sense, right? Pendulum scales may only be used by the player who controls them. As tag duels get funny about what you control, it should be emphasized you can only use the scales on your field. That makes total sense. It'd be so busted if like once either of you set up scales, it would make pendulums way too good in this type of format. You could just pen summon stuff for free. Then your teammate could just pen summon stuff for free every single turn. As long as you maintain scales on either side of the field, you guys are just going. So really good that that's not there. Sigok is ordered as such. Turn player's teammate, then opponents may order as they wish. Yeah, so it's you just. I don't know. I don't understand what this means. I don't know what Sigok means. Whatever. It seems pretty straightforward. With effects that affect an opponent's field, graveyard, or banish, they affect both players. But with effects that reference their hand deck or extra deck, you must choose which player you are affecting, which makes a lot of sense. It's like floodgate type stuff will affect both of them, like the whole field, like everybody. But if you're doing stuff like using Darkest Diablos to rip a card out of your opponent's hand, or Levianeer to rip cards out of your opponent's hand, you have to pick. You can't just rip a card out of each player's hand, or if you have a card that looks at your opponent's hand, like Aqua Dolphin, you can't just look at both of their hands. You got to pick one. It makes sense. I think it'd be a little too busted. And then Floodgates should be affecting the whole field. So it makes Floodgates, which is pretty good. With effects that reference the hand deck or extra deck that state both players, you choose which player from each team you affect. Note, if a card says a your in reference to those, then you have to choose your own. Okay. So this one's really cool as well because you could hit. I don't know. It's interesting. You can choose which one of your opponent maybe has the stronger situation, so you're going to hit them harder to weaken their stuff, and then maybe if your opponent or if your teammate doesn't have much set up, you can just make them take whatever. There's so many cards that you could put into this slot to fit into this situation, but that is nice. It gives you nice versatility, making cards work in different ways depending on who you want them to affect, and I think it adds a more interesting dynamic to the whole thing. Then you count as controlling cards on your teammate's field as well as having them in graveyard and banished. For example, if Gozen Match was on the field and player 1A controlled a fire monster, player 1B cannot attempt to summon a water. You can also interact with these cards in ways like summoning them to your field with Monster Reborn, which is really, really interesting. So you do control your opponent's stuff, you just can't work with them. Like we said before, you can tribute them for cost, but you can't be activating your teammates' monsters on your turn if they're not quick effects, right? Which is, I think it's fair. I think turns would be way too strong, and that was one thing I ran into with my friends when we would play. Is I'd be able to just do my stuff, and if my teammate also had a card that was just a once per turn effect, I could just go off and start activating that too, and then flipping his set cards face up, and it would just be way too strong. like for one turn. You just have access to way too many resources. So I think it is good that you are kind of like limited to your stuff. You just do with your stuff, but there are some other rulings that you technically control your opponent's stuff and work with that. I think floodgates are very, very strong in this kind of format if like your decks are built to work with them. But yeah. That's pretty much it. That's all like the specific rules. I'm sure there's other stuff that like isn't 100% cleared up yet, but this does do a good number on just making sure it's more clear on how like this format would be played, and hopefully we see some tournaments with this. I'd love to do this. You know what I mean? Like get with your best friend, like your best friend that's like a good duelist, and like build together and stuff, because you're not just building together as in like I helped him with his deck, he helped me with my deck. You're helping with each other's decks, because your teammate's deck essentially is going to become part of your deck, because you're going to control those monsters and stuff, and that it counts as your field. So, there's just a whole new dynamic to it. I think it's really cool to have different formats in a game like this, and I think this could just add to, the versatility of Yu-Gi-Oh! There could just be a whole player base that really just loves tag duels but doesn't love stuff, and could just, make the experience of Yu-Gi-Oh! Overall more versatile. And I love that. I love that so much. So, guys, let me know your thoughts on these down below. Let me know if you're excited for tag dueling. Like that'd be crazy. I think that'd be so cool. But that's pretty much it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, subscribe to the channel if you have not yet and you made it this far. Congrats. You made it a long ways. And, I'm going to get the hell out of here. Peace.